about something that I wish Professor C.V. Raman had set his mind to so many years, so many decades ago. Because I'm sure with the ingenuity that he brought to many of his studies, whether the Indian musical instrument or so many other things that he had done, I'm sure we wouldn't be breaking our heads over this problem of the allegedly musical pillars which exist at this temple called the Vitthala temple at Hampi. I'm sure most of you know where Hampi is. It's the capital of the empire, the Karnataka Empire, which ruled a large part of southern India between the mid-13th to mid-16th centuries. And in 1565, when the so-called Battle of Talikota happened and the empire collapsed, and then the capital city was left in ruins. They abandoned it. So to start off, let me take you away to Hampi. So I'm sure many of you have been to Hampi, and those of you who haven't definitely must go to Hampi. The first thing that you notice in Hampi is masses of boulders. They basically have these plains and granite inselbergs. Inselbergs are basically just these large upthrust areas of granite, and they're all very much boulder strewn. But granite is basically a plutonic rock, as geologists look at it, because all this granite was under the ground at one point of time, and this molten rock cooled under the ground relatively slowly, and so granite has relatively larger crystals. So it's notoriously difficult to carve, for example. Like if you look at your Hoysala temples, the kind of finishes that you get there, the kind of detail that the sculptor can bring out in schist, which was used there, cannot be done on granite. But still, and it also shatters. When you apply the chisel and hit it, actually shatters. So a granite sculptor has to be extremely good at bringing out the kind of sculptures now that you will find in Hampi. So this is probably one of the reasons why when the Vijayanagara was founded, the artisans came from Tamil Nadu, because in Karnataka mainly sculptors are working with sandstone and schist and softer rocks like that. And so whereas in Tamil Nadu, right from the time of the Pallavas in the 6th century, people have been using granite. So their experience with granite was probably more. Maybe that's the reason why a large number of artisans from Tamil Nadu had come here. So we'll be directly going on to the Vitthala temple here. So this is a view of the Vitthala temple from across the Tungabhadra. So you can see the thing massed around here and the dramatic backdrop of boulders that you see here. This is yet another view of that. And this is a view at sunset. And the Vitthala temple is supposed to be the climax of Vijayanagara architecture. So what started in a small way in the mid of 14th century, and then while we don't know when exactly the Vitthala temple was founded, people kept on adding on bits and pieces to it till the entire complex came about. So it's supposed to be the architectural climax of Vijayanagara. So now, without further ado, I'll just show you a couple of these so-called musical pillars. Then we can have a discussion about what they look like. So you can judge for yourself whether they are actually musical. I wish we could increase the volume somehow. So many of the columns go by different names. This one is called a Jaltarang. And there's another one. So this is Mr. Ali of the Archaeological Survey of India who's playing these for us. And this is again I'll let him do the explanation for that. So he's talking about the columns on two different sides of the same, the pillarets on the two different sides of the same column. And then he goes on to the other side and places the two columns on the other side also for us too. Here. That's a very familiar note, I guess, for most of us. So he calls it the school bell and the temple bell and the calling bell, but whatever it is, we can make sure that it is emitting two kinds of notes there. So as I told you, the Vitthala temple in its current condition, it stands like this. This is the famous stone chariot, the shrine to Garuda, because, okay, in in the front that you can see here. And the temple is ruined because the mandapa is ruined, and I'll just show you an aerial view of how this whole structure looks like. So this is the Tungabhadra river, and the temple has come here. So in the, some people speculate that in the 14th century itself there was a small shrine to Vitthala, which was later on added to by the different rulers. So we don't know when this nucleus came about, but we know that certain other things, like for example, we know that the Gopuras came about by two of Krishnadevaraya's wives in 1513 maybe, and this Mantapa was added by a very important official in the Vijayanagara court called Udagiri Timmaraju in the year 1554. Now one of the things people say about is that Vijayanagara has been very wonderfully recounted by many foreign travelers who have come here. How come they have not mentioned these musical pillars? One of the reasons could be that it was this Mantapa was added only in 1554, and by 1565 we had the Battle of Talikota, and the entire Mantapa was ruined. So this is how it looks like in the plan. So this is a Vitthala temple complex, and then you have this Rathabidi, or this with the this colonnaded street where we had shops and all that, like a bazaar in front of it. This is yet another view of it. So you can see that this is the Mantapa that we are talking about, which was added in 1554, which has the supposedly musical columns, and there's a plan of it. So this is a shrine at the nucleus, at the center of the whole, the focus of the whole thing, and it has got an ambulatory around it. So this part and this close Mantapa, the Guda Mantapa, was existing earlier, and this is the part that Udagiri Timmaraju added with 56 pillars here. This is how it looks like now in its current ruined condition. And yeah, so these are the 56 pillars that you have here. And so just to refer to them, we can give an alphanumeric thing. So this would be like A2 and stuff like that. So you can refer to each of these pillars individually. But the problem here is that when in 1565, when the Vijayanagara kings lost the battle to the Bijapur Sultanate, and the Deccan kings, they looted the place. So what you see, this is not the Mantapa, this is the Mahamantapa that you can see here. So, all said and done, even destroying a temple Mantapa is a tough job. So what they did was that they heaped firewood along the main axis, where you go on, look towards the deity and then set it on fire. So these are scenes of how the thing looked like after, sorry, I went the other way, of how it looked like after destruction. There are two views taken in the 1800s. So you can see here that the roof has collapsed. Many of the columns here, this one is considerably damaged by fire. But when you go away from the axis, many are reasonably intact for us to study. So column number, G5 is a stump only is left over. G6 has completely disappeared, and ASI has put a brick pier to support the areas there. Some of them show a lot of, this one is spalling, as it is called. When you apply fire to granite, the bits of it just fall off, which is called spalling. And so none of these can be studied, because you can see this one also. It's kind of obscured by the piers that was constructed by the PWD before ASI took over. But then there are some which are reasonably intact here. So this is a plan of the column. So generally the column has a load bearing area, which is the one which takes the weight of the roof and all that. And then you have projections, which here there's one little colonnade which comes out. There are these two colonnades that you can see here, which project out of it. And here you have a deity, in this case Narasimha, that you can see here. So the whole thing, the whole contraption, right from the base till the bottom of this capital that you see here, everything is carved out of one piece of stone. So that I had estimated that maybe the smallest musical pillar like this, which had only 4 columns, it would come to around 6. The original block from which they carved it would come to around 16 tons. And the largest one, which has around 16 colonnades, would come to about 32 tons. That is the kind of weights that they dealt with. Okay, and so this column is this particular one that you can see out there. So I'll just show you some, okay, before that, how did this musical, this is called a composite column, because you got the main column and then you have the little bits and pieces projecting out of it. So it came from Tamil Nadu actually, this concept. So if you look at a temple like Dharasuram or something, Chola temple, which is pre-Vijayanagara, you have the load-bearing portion and a little pilaster kind of thing projecting out, like you can see here. What happened is that when these people came over to Vijayanagara and started improving upon their earlier ideas, the pillarette actually comes clean out of the load-bearing mass, and it's carved completely in the round, as you can see here. And it has this basal portion, then you have you have 4-sided portion, then an octagonal portion, sometimes even a 16-sided thing, and then at the top you have this floral thing. There's a Amalaka-like thing, and then there's a Padma or a lotus-like thing which is projecting out. Interestingly, Dharasuram, the Airavateshwara temple, also has these steps which are unfortunately imprisoned now in this ugly cage-like thing. So there are the 7 steps which are supposed to be musical. I haven't seen that, in action at least. So this composite column that I showed you in the previous slide, it came to Vijayanagara the first time. It was exhibited in this Virupaksha temple complex, which you can see here. Which Virupaksha is the presiding deity of Vijayanagara, and so this is the Virupaksha temple complex. Like the Vitthala temple, this was also added on. It's a composite structure added on in subsequent generations. So here you have structures like this which show only a bit of the pillar projecting out, and you have like this where it has completely come out, and all these things are extremely well carved. I want you to notice this fact so that we can compare it with Vitthala temple, and most of them are identical. The sizes of all these things are identical, and they produced here. Where, so you can see closer up how well they have carved, even though they are granite and all that. You can see all these lines. The Padma is also well carved, and all columns have got identical size and shape in the Virupaksha temple. But not so in the Vitthala temple. So what you see here, you see these 2 columns on either side of this load-bearing area. They have the same base, but they have different heights. So that looks very inelegant. Especially, I'll show you some other examples where it is even more inelegant. So you can see here, and we're talking about the monument that is the climax of Vijayanagara architecture. So why were they so careless about it? So you can see that in the same row of columns, there are 2 distinctly different heights. So you know that when you change the length of the string which is vibrating or the height of the column which is vibrating, you can change the frequencies, right? And you can see that the finishes, when you saw in the last slide when I showed you the Virupaksha temple, this is very crudely finished. Again, some few more examples I just run through. This again you can see the same called E4, and you can see that the columns on different sides are of different heights. And in this case, again, you can see that the columns are very different. It looks visually it looks very inelegant. And in this case, it's even worse. You can see that the abacus or whatever on top of it, it has moved away. It looks like a careless mistake, but I rather think that it is not. There's a closer view of the same thing, which you can see here. By the time the Vitthala temple was sculpted, the artisans at Vijayanagara were capable of producing wonderful pieces of architecture. Why would they make a simple beginner's mistake like this? And then you have these things where you see the Padma is of different sizes and different things. Somewhere, it's not even very properly carved. Some places it's very crudely carved. And the masses there are differing. So you can see here, again in this, you can see the sizes are different. Some of them are very small, some of them are carved, some of them are not carved. Here you can see something which seems to be completely shaved flat. There's hardly any lotus there, isn't it? It's almost flat. Whereas some places, there's just lumps of rock there. So they've kept it there, so the mass is... and one more thing you'll notice is that the base here, though they're very close, somebody has taken care to separate them. Whereas in other places where the same kind of columns have been employed, like in this place called the Virupaksha temple itself, and in this Veerabhadra temple at Lepakshi, which is also a Vijayanagara temple, you find that when the bases are close by, they're fused. They don't bother to actually separate them. So why did they create this tiny little thing, maybe to separate the masses out or whatever? And then also they experimented with the cross sections. All of them are not square, all of them are not round. Some of them are turned squares, like you can see here in this particular column, which is I7. And here again you can see this one is a large mass of rock there. And you know that the cross sections are also important when you're producing rock, music or any sounds from a particular thing, because the way the torsional waves go across will be different in different cases. So, and also what is important is that this is another structure which has composite columns. It's called the Kudira Gombe Mantapa. It's actually on the way to the Vitthala temple itself. So you can see here that the positioning of the columns has a kind of an architectural logic. So here, it starts from here and goes around like that. Here you have only one colonnade, and this is a corner where the plinth turns around like that. So you have these 3 columns defining the corner like that. And then you have these vyalas coming here, and the same thing repeated there. You don't find any such spatial or architectural logic in the way the columns are produced there, are kept in the Vitthala temple there. So, there have been many other people also have been conjecturing about this. That one of the things that people say is that probably the artisans kept these rocks in there and kept on shaving away bits of the rock and sounding the note till they found the note that they want. That could be one way in which they did that. Now, I just want to point out that this whole idea of producing music from rocks is not a new thing. Okay, so if you go a few mountain ridges to the north of Hampi, you reach this spectacular, too many people don't see this. This is a megalithic graveyard, you could call it. It's a place called Hirebenakal, and it's a place where in the Iron Age, people commemorated the dead. Okay, so all these dolmens, as they call these megalithic structures, they look like stone huts. They were erected in memory of some dead people. And this entire region has got upwards of 1,000 megaliths, all of them not so spectacular, some of them are less spectacular. Closer up they look like this. Most of them are ruined because a lot of treasure hunters go there and dig around hoping that they'll find treasure below these things. It's a very spectacular site, and you can see that amount of stoneworking that has happened. So people build these large stone huts or dolmens or whatever, and then they use this rubble to kind of pack the outside of it, which is all fallen down now, of course, so that the stones don't collapse outwards. And here, there's a very interesting thing here. This is again, there's a kind of landscape there with these perched rocks which weathering has produced, eons of weathering has produced. One of them looks very strange. It looks like somebody has sliced it like a fruit or something. So this one is called the Nagadi Gund. In the locals called the Nagadi Gund, because even today if you climb there and hit it with a wooden club, it produces a ringing note that you can hear for a large distance around. So it looks very, I mean, to play upon imagery that we already have, it looks like the tolling of a bell when there's a death rituals happening or people are being laid to rest. It's also very spectacular setting, as you can see there, and you can see how nicely they finished it. There's yet another megalithic site east of this called Mallapur. So this place was inhabited by humans from prehistoric period, right from the early Stone Age. You can find vestiges down to these. This is in the Iron Age, roughly 1500 BC to maybe early first centuries of the Common Era. Here too there are a lot of megaliths, almost all of them are ruined. But near Mallapur, there is a temple, not a very spectacular temple, a small temple called Vanibhadreshwara temple. That's what the locals call it. But if you look at the place where Vijayanagara was founded, this it used to be known as Pampa Kshetra. Pampa is the river Tungabhadra, and this was a tirtha, which is, we know at least from 9th century there are records that were seen as a tirtha. So if you look at the work called Pampa Mahatmya, which is a Sthala Purana of that place, you find that there are these 8 guardian gateway kind of structures, places on all the 4 cardinal directions and the 4 sub-cardinal directions around Pampa Kshetra. This one is, in the text it's called Manibhadreshwara, and the locals have called it now Vanibhadreshwara. It's a very simple temple. We know that the temple was created during the Vijayanagara period, so this is another view of it. Okay, so Vijayanagara artisans have worked on it, even though today you have some really crazy kind of stuff happening on the upper part and all that. But this is also a later period structure, but within that you find the structure was created during Vijayanagara period. So we know that Vijayanagara artisans were active in this region. This region is also very spectacular in its thing. Somebody has tried to shape that boulder into a Nandi, and there's also, keeping with the times, there's also rock art of a dubious nature in the same vicinity. Yeah, but what's important here is that there is a lithophone, as they call it. Okay, these lithophones are these natural piece of rock. In this case, you know that this piece of rock has fallen away from here in some geological past, and somebody knocking around on it found that it creates music when you hit on it. So what they've done is they've kind of made ground cupules or cup-shaped depressions in areas where it resonates. Okay, so if you strike there, it creates some. Lithophones are common all over South India. I mean, in many other parts of the world also you find it. But this way, generally, you find lithophone associated with the Neolithic. Neolithic is the late Stone Age. In South India, around 3000 BC to 1500 BC, you could say roughly. And lithophone, one of the characteristics is that they hardly, if this is lying on the bedrock, you can see that very little part of it touches the ground actually. So it's fallen in such a way that if you hit it, the whole thing is able to resonate. I'll just show you some, this one I hope, a small video taken, it's not very clear, the sound is not that clear I think, so somebody has kept a small strike. I think there's another video which probably can tell you a little better. Certainly not a sound you associate with rock, right? So yeah, what I will do is uh, I will just try to come out of the presentation. I'll show you another video which I think will give you. If you here I've used a slightly a more massive striker. I mean, if you don't see the video, you can imagine it's a bell, right? Okay, the point I was trying to make here is that it's definitely, I mean, it's definitely possible that the Vijayanagara artisans who were working on this temple would have definitely noticed the lithophone in the neighborhood. It's very close by. Most of the devotees go and bang on it, which is why it's currently in a very abraded condition. And in the near the temple, there's again one more stone which they seem to have tried to cut into this, that kettle drum like thing which you saw in Hirabanikal. So now there's a sort of pattern that you notice here. So the friend of mine who was working in Krishnagiri across the border in Tamil Nadu, in the Anchetti forest, so he sent me the picture of this curiously patterned rock, and he asked me, do you have any idea what this is? So on a hunch I told him, try striking it, it might be a musical rock. And he found that it was actually a musical rock. So this is found in abundance throughout. There's another thing I will just show you. All of you know Bannerghatta National Park. Apart from the wildlife and the safaris there, you also have a lot of megalithic structures in that region. So you have, these are the crude dolmens that you find in the region. And among them, there's one particular rock which is currently lying on its side in a heavily degraded area. But this is how it looks like. So I'm fairly sure that if you put it in the right position on a rock, this thing and bang it, this also would be a musical rock. So what I'm trying to say is that this idea of using rocks to generate musical notes or whatever is a very ancient thing. It comes right from and it's not just in India, you find it all over the world, these kind of structures. So why is it that you find it happening in the Stone Age and then later in the medieval period that people are trying to create musical sounds out of rock? One of the reasons is possibly that these people during the Stone Age spent a lot of their working life banging stone against stone, trying to knap stone tools and create other things which went into their monuments, like the one you saw in Hirabanikal. And also the medieval artisans, they were spending a lot of time just hitting rocks with chisels, and who better than them to understand what kind of properties that the stone would have. I'll end this talk here. I'll be happy to take questions along with others. Thank you.